On January 17th, the geopolitical landscape of the West didn't just shift, it fractured. From his residence, President Trump issued an ultimatum that sounded more like a corporate raid than international diplomacy. Starting February 1, 2026, a 10% blanket tariff will be slapped on all goods entering the US from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland. On June 1st, that tax jumps to a staggering 25%. The buyout price? The complete and total purchase of Greenland. Trump claims the US has subsidized the EU for years and that it's time for Denmark to give back. Today, we're looking at the secret EU plan to fight back. The energy-mad scenario that could freeze the global economy, and why the next 2 weeks are the most dangerous for the West since 1945. Behind the closed doors of the Berlaymont in Brussels, senior officials have been shocked out of their holiday torpor. What has emerged is a broad 3-point plan to defuse this hostile takeover. Pillar 1 is economics. Brussels is pivoting from being a grant giver to an infrastructure builder. They aren't just sending aid to Greenland anymore. They are doubling their budget to €530 million. The goal? To make Greenland's rare earths and minerals easier and cheaper for the private sector to mine. They are essentially trying to create a business case for Greenland that keeps it European, hoping to satisfy Trump's transactional nature without selling the land. Pillar 2 is security. This is what analysts are calling the 5% logic. Europe is trying to kill the free rider argument. France, Germany, and Sweden have already deployed troops to Greenland. On January 15th, President Macron announced even more warships and aircraft. By committing to hit 5% of GDP in defense spending by 2035, Europe is trying to show they are serious. They are even floating a Cyprus model, offering the US sovereign bases on Greenland without transferring the soil. But what if the carrots don't work? That's where Pillar 3 comes in. The consequences. If Trump pulls the trigger on Feb 1st, the EU is prepared to launch a full-scale economic counterattack. We now are talking about the anti-coercion instrument, a powerful legal tool that allows the EU to slap massive tariffs back on US goods, specifically targeting manufacturing and agriculture in states that are critical for the 2026 midterm elections. Then there is the digital stick. Europe is ready to implement aggressive digital services taxes on US tech giants and effectively tear up the pending US-EU trade deal. As of today, many Danish members of parliament are already calling for a total freeze on legislative approvals for US goods. We are looking at a trade war that could wipe trillions off global markets before the first snowflake of February hits the ground. But there is one factor that might stop both sides from going over the cliff: energy. Call it energy MAD. MAD is an acronym that stands for Mutually Assured Destruction. Currently, the EU relies on the US for nearly 50% of its LNG, or liquefied natural gas. If that supply stops, Europe freezes. But here's the flip side. US exporters need Europe. Without the European marginal buyer, US gas projects fail, and domestic producers lose billions. Most analysts believe energy is the last resort. My likely scenario? Trade in goods will get ugly, but the gas will keep flowing. However, we are seeing the rise of energy-adjacent pressure. The EU could use methane regulations or ESG financing constraints to slow-walk US gas contracts without a formal ban. But in a territorial dispute, rational economics often go out the window. If Trump views Greenland as his ultimate legacy, he may be willing to absorb the pain of an energy disruption to force Denmark's hand. So, where does this end? The EU believes Trump won't walk away from NATO because US defense manufacturers are making too much money from the European arms race. They are betting that the US Congress and the American public won't support a trade war over a massive island in the Arctic. But the clock is ticking. On February 1st, the first 10% tariff becomes due and payable. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has made it clear. She will not be pressured over territory. She is calling it a rally around the flag moment for Europe. Is this the end of the transatlantic alliance, or is this just the most extreme real estate negotiation in human history? The energy-mad status quo is being stress-tested like never before. We want to hear from you. Do you think the US will actually pull the trigger on February 1st? Or will Brussels find a way to make a deal? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we track global geopolitical crises like these every day.